There is a city that once stood at the heart of the world, not the whole world perhaps, but a world complete unto itself, a world of silk and cedar, of ink brushed onto paper made from the inner bark of trees, of prayers murmured before dawn, and poems slipped beneath screens in the blue hour before sleep. The city was called Heian, and its name meant peace. It sat in a wide valley cradled by mountains on three sides, and through it ran rivers that carried snowmelt down from the heights, cold and clear, into the slow-moving channels of the capital. It is the year 1000, or very nearly 1,000 years ago, in the place we now call Kyoto, and if you were to arrive here on an evening in late winter, stepping as if from a dream into the hush of the city at dusk, the first thing you would notice is the cold. Not a harsh cold, but a stillness in the air, a quietness that settles over the wooden rooftops and the bare-branched gardens and the long, unpaved avenues that run north to south in their patient grid. Smoke rises from the homes of the capital, thin threads of it, carrying the scent of charcoal, and, beneath that, something sweeter. The faint perfume of incense, drifting through reed blinds and paper screens, scenting the cold evening air with clove and aloes wood and sandalwood. Let us follow one of those threads of smoke. Let us follow it to a modest estate on the eastern side of the city, where a wooden gate stands between two weathered posts, and beyond it a garden sleeps under the last pale light of the February sky. This is the home of a woman named Fujiko. She is the daughter of a man who once served as a provincial governor, a position of some learning and some means, though not of the highest rank. Her father is gone now, and her husband too is gone, taken by one of the fevers that sweep through the capital every few years, claiming noble and commoner alike. Fujiko is in her late 30s, which in this time and place means she has lived long enough to know the weight of things, to understand that a household does not sustain itself on beauty alone, though beauty is what gives it meaning. This evening, Fujiko sits in her private room, a space no larger than a few tatami mats, screened from the rest of the house by standing curtains and sliding panels of translucent paper. A single oil lamp burns low beside her writing desk. Before her is a small ceramic brazier, and on a bed of ash within it, a piece of mica holds a fragment of aloes wood. The wood does not burn. It smolders, releasing its fragrance slowly into the room, and the scent is deep and resinous, warm as amber, with a sweetness underneath that seems to belong to some other season entirely. Fujiko has chosen this particular wood for this particular evening because it carries within it, she feels, something of the patience one needs in winter, the patience of waiting for things to begin. She is blending incense. Before her, in small lidded containers of lacquered wood, are the ingredients of a winter takemono, a kneaded incense that she will press into small shapes and set aside to mature. There is powdered clove and the pale dust of borneol and honey and plum flower extract and the dark, almost chocolatey richness of aged aloes wood. Fujiko works with a small wooden spatula, folding the ingredients together on a stone pallet, adjusting by scent, by intuition, by the memory in her hands. She has been blending incense since she was younger than her daughter is now. Her mother taught her, and her mother's mother before that, though the recipes are never quite the same because the materials change and the seasons change, and the one who blends changes too. Tonight's blend is for the plum blossoms. In a few days, the first buds on the old tree in the garden will open. She has been watching them, the tight fists of color on the dark branches, and she knows they are close. Plum blossoms arrive before cherry blossoms, before any other flowering in the garden, and they bloom in the cold. There is something brave about them, she thinks, something unconcerned with whether the world is ready. From somewhere deeper in the house comes the soft sound of wooden clappers, a rhythmic, unhurried beat. That is Renshi, Fujiko's aunt, performing her evening devotions. Renshi lives in a small wing of the compound, a space she has made her own since she took informal Buddhist vows some years ago. The room is spare, a low writing desk, a small altar with a figure of Amida Buddha, a brazier for warmth, and very little else. Renshi wears the plain, undyed robes of a lay nun, and her hair, once long enough to trail behind her on the floor, as was the fashion of noble women, is now cut short. She is in her early 60s, and there is about her a quality of lightness, as though she has set down something heavy and not yet decided whether she misses it. Each evening, Renshi chants the Nenbutsu, the simple invocation of Amida Buddha's name. The words are few and they repeat, and the repetition is the point, or so she has been told. She was told, when she first took her vows, that the Nenbutsu carried the power to bring one to the Western paradise after death, that in this degenerate age, this age of Mappo, when the old paths to enlightenment had grown tangled and impassable, simple faith was the only door still open. Renshi believed this, or wanted to, but in truth, for many years, the words felt hollow in her mouth, a habit rather than a prayer. She said them because she had promised to say them, and because the rhythm of them organized her evenings, gave shape to the hours, and that was enough. Whether it was faith, real faith, the kind that transforms, she could not say, but she says them still, and tonight, as the sound of the clappers moves through the wooden walls of the compound, it reaches Fujiko in her incense room, and it reaches the ears of a young woman named Sayin, who lies on her sleeping mat in the attendants' quarters, not yet asleep, listening. Sayin arrived at this household only a few weeks ago. She is in her early 20s, the daughter of a minor branch of a provincial family whose fortunes have dimmed. She has been placed here as a lady-in-waiting, a nyobo, to serve Fujiko and to learn the arts that a woman of her station must master: calligraphy, poetry, the preparation of ink and paper, the intricate rules of dress that govern which colors may be layered in which season, and, above all, the unspoken language of taste that separates the refined from the merely competent. Sayin is earnest. She is anxious to do well. She has memorized the color combinations for late winter robes, the layering called Yuki no Shita beneath the snow, with its outer layers of white over an underpinning of faint plum blossom pink, and she selected her robes this morning with great care, but she is not yet sure that care is the same thing as grace, and the difference troubles her. She listens to the clappers and the murmured chanting, and the sounds are comforting in their steadiness, like the ticking of rain on a wooden roof. She does not yet know Renshi well. She knows only that the older woman is kind, that she moves through the house with a quietness that seems earned rather than practiced, and that she sometimes smiles at things no one else has noticed. Sayin pulls her quilted sleeping robe closer around her shoulders and lets the sound carry her toward sleep. Outside, in the garden, the plum tree holds its buds against the cold, and the darkness is gentle, and the city of Heian is still. Some days later, when the plum blossoms have begun to open, cautiously, a few at a time, as though testing the air, a man named Narimichi makes his way along the eastern road toward the capital. He is a man of middle years, 45 or so, with a weathered face and hands that are always faintly fragrant, no matter how many times he washes them. This is the mark of his trade. Narimichi is a supplier and blender of incense, a merchant artisan who travels between the noble households of Heian, carrying the raw materials of fragrance, aloes wood from the southern seas, clove and cinnamon from the continent, sandalwood and borneol, and the rare, almost floral musk that arrives wrapped in oiled cloth after months of travel along the trade routes. He carries these materials in a wooden chest strapped to his back, and he walks with the unhurried pace of a man who has covered this road many times and knows every bend of it, every farmhouse, every stand of trees where the light falls a certain way in the morning. Narimichi occupies an unusual place in the world. He is a commoner, he holds no rank, he owns no land, and by the rigid hierarchies of Heian society, he is far beneath the people he serves. And yet his knowledge gives him access. A nose like his is rare, and the aristocracy depends on fragrance the way it depends on poetry and silk. It is one of the essential languages of refinement. Narimichi is welcomed into rooms where other commoners would never be admitted. He sits on the edge of the veranda while a noblewoman describes from behind her screen the quality of scent she desires for the coming season. He listens with his whole body. He understands things about his clients that they do not always understand about themselves. That this one is grieving, that one is restless, that another is trying to hold on to something that is already passing, because scent, more than any other sense, reveals what is hidden. He has known Fujiko for many years. He knew her father, too, supplied his household with incense when Fujiko was still a girl. Over the years, a warmth has grown between them that neither would describe as friendship, because the social distance between them forbids that word, and yet it is something close to it. When Narimichi arrives at the estate, he is greeted not with the perfunctory courtesy given to a tradesman, but with genuine welcome. Fujiko prepares tea for him herself, a small gesture but one that says, "I see you." And when they sit together to discuss the season's blends, their conversation moves with the ease of two people who have long since stopped needing to explain themselves to each other. But before Narimichi reaches the capital, his road takes him past a place he always visits, a small workshop beside a cold stream, about an hour's walk from the city gates. This is where Enshu makes paper. Imagine a low wooden building open on one side to the stream, with a sloped roof of bark shingles and walls darkened by years of moisture and smoke. The sound of water is constant here. The stream runs fast and cold, fed by mountain springs, and it is this water that makes the paper possible. Inside the workshop, wooden vats stand in a row, filled with a milky suspension that looks at first glance like thin porridge. This is the pulp of kozo, the inner bark of the paper mulberry tree, which has been harvested in winter, steamed, stripped, soaked, beaten, and finally dispersed in water with a viscous plant mucilage that slows the drainage and allows the fibers to interlock. Enshu is an old man now, nearly 70, and his body carries the cost of his work. His hands are swollen at the knuckles, reddened by decades of immersion in cold water. His back curves forward from years of standing over the vats. He moves slowly in the mornings, easing himself into the day the way one eases into a cold bath. But when he takes up the su, the flexible bamboo screen mounted on a wooden frame that is the papermaker's essential tool, something changes in him. His movements become fluid, precise, almost musical. He dips the screen into the vat, scoops up a layer of pulp, and then begins the motion that defines the Nagashi-suki technique, a rocking back and forth flow that sends the liquid across the screen in waves, building the sheet layer by layer. Excess water drains through the bamboo, the fibers knit together, and when he lifts the screen, there it is, a sheet of paper, translucent and wet, trembling faintly, alive with the light that passes through it. He does this again and again. Each sheet is laid upon the last with a thin thread between them so they can later be separated. The stack grows. Tomorrow, or the day after, he will press the water from the stack using a weighted lever, and then he will carry each sheet to the drying boards, smooth planks of ginkgo wood set at an angle to catch the sun, and brush them flat and wait. It is slow work. It has always been slow work, and Enshu has always loved it, though he would not use that word. He would say it is what he does, what he has always done, what his hands know how to do, even when his mind wanders. But lately his hands have begun to betray him. The swelling in his joints has worsened over this winter, and there are mornings when he cannot close his fingers around the frame, when the cold water sends a pain through his wrists that makes his breath catch. He has not spoken of this to anyone. He is not a man who speaks easily of himself, but the knowledge sits inside him like a stone in a stream. The water moves around it. The day continues, but the stone does not move. When Naramichi arrives, the two men greet each other with the comfortable brevity of old acquaintance. Naramichi sets down his chest and accepts a cup of hot water, not tea, for Enshu does not keep tea, only water heated over his workshop fire. They sit together at the edge of the stream and watch the water move over the stones. Naramichi has brought an order from a household across the city, a request for a particular weight and texture of paper suitable for poetry written in a woman's hand. Enshu listens, nods. He knows this kind of paper. It should be smooth but not slippery, absorbent enough to hold the ink without bleeding, thin enough to fold without cracking. He will add a touch of gampi fiber to the kozo for sheen. He will size it lightly with persimmon tannin. They talk, as they always do, about small things, the quality of this winter's kozo harvest, the price of lye for stripping bark, a family of herons that has taken up residence downstream, and beneath the small things, as always, is the larger thing they share without naming, that they are both men who serve a world that depends on them but rarely sees them. The paper that Enshu makes will carry the poems and letters and sutras of people who will never know his name. The incense that Naramichi blends will fill rooms he will never sit in as a guest. And yet without them, the world of silk and poetry would have no surface to write on, no fragrance to breathe in, no ground beneath its elegance. They do not speak of this. They do not need to. The stream speaks for them, steady and cold, carrying everything forward. Spring arrives in Heian the way a guest arrives at a formal gathering, gradually, with many small announcements, each one more beautiful than the last. First the plum blossoms, which have now opened fully in Fujiko's garden, filling the cold air with their sharp, sweet fragrance, a scent so distinct that in the Heian world it is used as the name for a particular combination of robe colors, kobai. red plum, with its layers shading from deep rose at the outer robe to the palest pink at the wrist. Then the willows along the Kamo River begin to show green, a green so tentative it seems almost imagined. Then the cherry trees. Let us visit the garden. Yoshikane has been tending this garden for more than 20 years. He arrived as a young man, apprenticed to an older garden keeper who had worked for Fujiko's father, and when the older man grew too frail to continue, Yoshikane simply stayed. He is in his early 50s now, broad-shouldered, with the kind of stillness in his body that comes from years of physical work performed with attention. His face is deeply lined by sun and wind, and his hands are extraordinary, large, rough-skinned, and yet capable of a delicacy that would surprise anyone who saw only their surface. The garden of this estate is built in the Shinden style, a pond at its center, fed by a narrow channel that carries water from the nearby stream, with an arched bridge of unpainted wood and a small island planted with a single pine. Around the pond, carefully placed stones suggest a mountain landscape in miniature. Moss covers the ground beneath the maples and the flowering cherries. A winding path of flat stepping stones leads from the veranda of the main house to a small pavilion at the water's edge, where, on summer evenings, the household sometimes gathers to watch the fireflies. Yoshikane learned his craft not from books, but from a man who had learned it from another man before him, a chain of knowledge passed hand to hand across generations. The teachings were simple and few, but they went deep. Listen to the stone, his teacher had told him. Every stone has a face, a direction it wants to look. If you place it wrongly, it will be unhappy, and the garden will feel it. Follow the water. Water knows where it wants to go. Your task is not to command it, but to prepare the way. And above all, do not try to improve upon nature. Try, instead, to remind people of what nature already is. These are not ideas Yoshikane could easily put into words. They live in his body in the way he turns a stone slowly in his hands before setting it down, in the way he reads the angle of a branch before deciding where to prune. But they are real as any teaching written in any sutra, and they shape everything he does. This spring the cherry trees are glorious. They bloom in a wave, from the earliest flowering variety near the gate to the great weeping cherry by the pond, which opens last and holds its blossoms longest. Yoshikane stands beneath the weeping cherry on the morning it reaches full bloom, and he does what he does every year at this moment. He simply looks. The blossoms are white with the faintest blush of pink at their centers, and they hang in clusters so heavy that the branches bow under their weight, forming a kind of canopy, a room made of flowers. The light that filters through them is soft, pink gold, and the petals that have already begun to fall drift on the surface of the pond like small boats with no destination. He is aware that someone is watching him. Takako has come to the edge of the veranda. She is 17, Fujiko's daughter, and she has her mother's dark, observant eyes and her mother's habit of noticing more than she says. She has been watching the garden keeper for several weeks now, not with any particular intention, but because something about the way he works draws her attention. He moves so slowly. He looks at things for so long before touching them. She has been raised in a world where beauty is everywhere, in the colors of robes, in the curve of calligraphy, in the cadence of a well-turned poem, but always beauty that has been made, arranged, composed. Yoshikane seems to be doing something different. He seems to be listening to beauty that is already there and helping it speak. She does not approach him today. She watches from behind the wooden railing of the veranda, and when a gust of wind sends a flurry of cherry petals across the garden, hundreds of them spinning in the air like fragments of some gentle, unfinished thought, she finds herself holding her breath. Inside the house, the season brings its own rituals. Fujiko and Heian sit together in the dressing room, selecting the layered robes for a visit to a nearby shrine. Spring calls for the combination known as sakura, cherry blossom, with its white outer layer over gradations of pink that deepen toward the body. Heian handles the silk with careful hands, smoothing each layer, checking the edges where the colors show at the wrist and the hem. She has studied the color charts, memorized the names. She knows that this combination is correct for the third month, that the shading should suggest a blossom seen from the outside, white petals concealing the warm heart within. But Fujiko, watching her, gently rearranges one of the inner layers, shifting it so that a slightly warmer tone of pink shows at the cuff. It is not a correction exactly. It is more like a musician adjusting a note by a fraction. Technically, it could go either way, but this way it breathes. Heian notices. She does not yet understand why it is better, only that it is, and the difference troubles and fascinates her in equal measure. Later that week, Naramichi comes to the estate. He sits on the outer veranda, his customary place where the boundary between the house and the garden is most permeable, and Fujiko receives him from behind a standing screen as convention requires, though the screen is placed casually, almost as an afterthought, and their conversation flows easily across it. He has brought a new variety of aloes wood, acquired from a merchant who trades with ships from the south. It is lighter than the wood Fujiko usually uses, with a higher, almost citrus-like note beneath the resinous depth. He unwraps it from its cloth and holds it toward the screen so she can lean forward and smell it. There is a pause, the particular, attentive pause of someone encountering a scent for the first time and letting it unfold. She says it reminds her of wisteria evenings. He smiles at this because it is exactly right. There is something in the wood that evokes the cool sweetness of late spring, the way wisteria hangs in heavy purple clusters over the garden trellises, its fragrance strongest at dusk. They talk about how it might be used. She suggests blending it with a touch of plum and borneol to bridge the seasons, a scent that would carry the memory of late winter's plum blossoms into the warmth of spring. He considers this, nodding slowly, and offers a refinement, a small addition of clove, barely detectable, to give the blend a grounding warmth, the way the earth smells after rain. This is how they have always spoken to each other, through the medium of scent, which is a language without social rank, a place where a merchant's nose and a noblewoman's intuition meet as equals. Over the years, a trust has grown between them that neither takes for granted. Fujiko knows that Naramichi carries stories from other households. He hears things, in his travels between estates, that no one else hears, but he is discreet, and she respects his discretion as much as his skill. He, in turn, understands that Fujiko is a woman holding a household together with grace and intelligence, and that the incense she blends is not merely decoration, but a kind of language she uses to speak the things she cannot say aloud. When he leaves that afternoon, walking back through the garden gate with his chest on his back. The air behind him carries a faint trail of sandalwood and clove, and Sain, who happens to be crossing the courtyard, catches it on the breeze and stands still for a moment, struck by the simple beauty of a scent she cannot name, carried by a man she barely knows, disappearing into the spring afternoon. Summer in Heian begins with rain. It comes in the 5th month and does not stop. Day after day the sky is a low ceiling of gray, and the rain falls sometimes heavily, sometimes as a fine mist that blurs the outlines of the garden into something dreamlike, but always, always falling. The wooden walkways between the buildings of the estate grow dark with moisture. The paper screens soften and swell. The pond in the garden rises until it overtops its stone edges and sends thin fingers of water creeping across the moss. Life turns inward during the rains. The household gathers more closely together, the rooms smaller somehow, more intimate. Fujiko spends long hours at her writing desk, her brush moving in the quiet, unhurried rhythm of a woman who writes not for an audience, but for herself. She keeps a journal, not a diary of events exactly, but a record of impressions, images, feelings, the quality of light through a rain-streaked screen, the way a particular color of silk looked against Takako's skin. A line from a poem she half remembers, attributed to a woman who served at the court of a previous empress, the kind of woman Fujiko might have become in another life if her family's position had been a step or two higher. She writes in the flowing kana script, the syllabic writing that women of her class have made their own, a script more fluid and expressive than the formal Chinese characters used by men in their official correspondence. There is a loneliness in these rain-bound days that Fujiko does not try to avoid. She has learned, over the years of her widowhood, that loneliness is not the same as unhappiness. It is a kind of openness, a space in which things can be felt more clearly. When she was younger, she filled every silence with activity, with management, with the small, urgent tasks of keeping a household alive. Now she allows herself sometimes to simply sit and listen to the rain. Sayan is less comfortable with the stillness. She has been in the household for several months now, and her initial anxiety has softened into something more like attentiveness. She watches Fujiko the way a young musician watches a master, trying to understand not just what is done, but how and why. But the rain makes her restless. She has finished her copying practice. Her calligraphy is improving, Fujiko tells her, which is the kind of understatement that could mean anything, and the house feels close, and her thoughts circle. It is on one of these rain-heavy afternoons that Sayan finds herself bringing tea to Renshi's room. The retired nun is sitting by her small window, which looks out onto a tiny enclosed garden, not the grand pond garden of the main house, but a modest planting of medicinal herbs that Renshi tends herself. In the rain, the herbs are vivid, their greens almost luminous. Renshi accepts the tea with a warmth that puts Sayan immediately at ease, and gestures for the young woman to sit. They talk, at first, about small things. Sayan asks about the herbs, what they are used for. Renshi tells her, this one is for headaches, this one settles the stomach, this one is said to calm the spirit, though Renshi adds, with a gentle humor, that the spirit seems to have its own ideas about when it wishes to be calm. Sayan laughs, and the sound surprises her. She has been so careful, so correct for so many weeks that she has almost forgotten what it feels like to simply laugh. And then Renshi says something that stays with Cyan long afterward. She says that when she first began tending this small garden, she was restless too. She had just taken her vows, and she expected that the life of devotion would bring her peace, a settling, a certainty. Instead, she found herself kneeling in the dirt, pulling weeds, with no more peace than she had before. She expected the Nenbutsu to transform her. It did not. What transformed her, eventually, was the garden itself, the slowness of it, the way a plant does not hurry, the way the rain falls on the just and the unjust and the lavender and the mugwort all alike. She began to understand that peace was not a destination. It was something that happened in the middle of other things, in the spaces between. Cyan does not fully understand this, but she holds it the way one holds a smooth stone found on a riverbank, not knowing yet what it means, but sensing that it is worth keeping. Elsewhere in the household, Takako has begun a quiet rebellion. She slips out onto the veranda even in the rain, sitting at the edge with her feet tucked beneath her, watching the water fall into the pond. The garden looks different in the rain, softer, more mysterious, the stones dark and gleaming, the moss almost impossibly green. She can see where Yoshikane has placed new stepping stones along the path that leads to the eastern edge of the garden, a section that has been neglected for years, where the ground has gone weedy and a small retaining wall has crumbled. He is rebuilding it. She has watched him carry stones on his back, one at a time, placing each one with an attention that seems almost ceremonial. One morning, she works up the courage to speak to him. He is clearing debris from the stream channel, his sleeves tied back, mud on his forearms, and she calls to him from the veranda, a quiet greeting, almost formal. He straightens, surprised. It is unusual for a young woman of the household to address a garden keeper directly, but Takako's tone is not condescending. It is curious. She asks him about the stone he placed yesterday, a large, flat-topped stone near the stream's edge, tilted slightly, as though it were leaning forward to look at the water. She asks why he placed it at that angle, and Yoshikane, after a pause, gives her an answer that is both simple and strange. He says the stone wanted to see the water. He says he turned it several times before he found the direction it was happiest facing, and that the stone told him when he got it right because it settled, not physically, but in some way he could feel, the way you can feel when a note of music resolves. Takako thinks about this for a long time after he returns to his work. The idea that a stone might have a preference, that placing it is not about the gardener's will, but about the stone's nature. It is not a way of thinking she has encountered before, not in her poetry lessons, not in the sutras her mother sometimes reads aloud, not in the elaborate systems of color and season and form that govern the household's aesthetic life. And yet it feels true, in a way she cannot quite explain. In the distance, through the gray curtain of the rain, the voice of the hototogisu, the little cuckoo, sounds once, twice, and then is gone. By the 8th month, the rains have passed and the air has changed. There is a clarity to the autumn sky in Heian that makes the world feel rinsed, every edge sharpened, every color deepened. The maples in Fujiko's garden have begun their slow transformation, not yet the full blaze of autumn, but the first intimations of it, a warming in the leaves at their tips as though they are blushing. The household prepares for tsukimi, the moon viewing. This is one of the great rituals of the Heian year, and it is a ritual not of religion, but of beauty. On the 15th night of the 8th month, when the autumn moon is at its fullest and most luminous, the people of the capital gather to observe it, not worship it, simply look at it, and to allow the looking to become a kind of meditation. The aristocracy views the moon from their garden pavilions, with offerings of seasonal grasses and dumplings arranged on low tables, and sake poured into shallow cups in which the moon's reflection can be caught and symbolically drunk. Poetry is composed, music is sometimes played, and the point of all of it, the food, the poetry, the arrangement of grasses, the careful positioning of oneself in relation to the moon's reflection on the water, is to create a moment of perfect attention, a moment in which the beauty of the world is fully received. Fujiko has prepared thoughtfully. The pavilion by the pond has been swept and furnished with cushions and low armrests. Lanterns are set along the path but left unlit. The whole purpose of the evening is the moon, and any competing light would diminish it. Saiyan has arranged the offerings, Suzuki grass in a tall vase, its silvery plumes catching the last light of the dying sun, and rice dumplings stacked in a pyramid on a wooden stand. Fujiko has selected a particular incense for the evening, a blend that Narimichi helped her create earlier in the season, one that uses the light aloes wood he brought in spring, now tempered with autumn notes of chrysanthemum and a bare trace of aged ginkgo that gives it gravity without heaviness. Narimichi himself is here. He came to the city for what may be his last visit before winter closes the roads, and Fujiko invited him with careful propriety to observe the moon from the garden. He sits at a respectful distance from the household, on the far side of the pavilion near the edge of the pond, but he is present, and this itself is a kind of gift, one that Fujiko offered and he accepted, both of them understanding what it means and what it does not. Renchi is here, settled on a cushion with her prayer beads in her lap, looking out at the garden with an expression of quiet contentment. Takako sits beside her mother, dressed in the autumn layering called hagi, bush clover, with its layers of crimson and russet and faded green, the colors of the turning season. Saiyan sits nearby, her hands folded, watching everything. The moon rises. It comes up over the eastern wall of the garden, slowly, enormously, its face so clear and close it seems almost near enough to touch. The light it casts is silver blue, and it transforms the garden utterly. The pond becomes a mirror. The stones become mountains in a landscape of silver. The moss glows faintly, and the plumes of Suzuki grass shine like threads of white silk. The incense smoke drifts across the pavilion in slow, sinuous threads, and the fragrance mingles with the cool night air and the faint scent of the pond and the autumnal smell of the garden. Leaves beginning to turn, earth cooling, the last of the summer warmth held in the stones. For a long moment, no one speaks. This is the heart of tsukimi, the silence in which beauty is received. Then Fujiko softly offers a poem. She does not recite it aloud so much as murmur it, the way one might murmur a thought that has just arrived and might leave again if spoken too loudly. The poem is about the moon on the water, not the moon itself, but its reflection, which is both the moon and not the moon, both real and not real, beautiful precisely because it cannot be held. Narimichi, from his place by the pond, turns the poem over in his mind and smiles. It is, he thinks, very like her, a poem about the beauty of what cannot be kept. He would like to reply with a poem of his own, but poetry is not his art. Instead, he does something small. He takes the cup of sake before him, holds it at just the right angle to catch the moon's reflection, and then drinks. It is a gesture that Fujiko, glancing toward him, understands perfectly. He is telling her that he has received her poem, that he has held the moon in his cup and let it go. Later in the evening, after the moon has risen higher and the conversation has softened into comfortable silence, Cyan finds herself sitting beside Renshi at the edge of the pavilion. The older woman's face is very still in the moonlight, and there is something in her expression, a peacefulness that seems different from her usual quiet. That makes Cyan ask a question she has been carrying for weeks. She asks Renshi if she ever regrets her choice, taking vows, leaving the world of color and silk and layered robes for the plain garments and the prayer beads and the morning chanting. Renshi is quiet for a long time. The question is not impolite, it is honest, and Renshi values honesty above almost all other qualities because she spent so many years surrounded by the opposite. She tells Cyan slowly that for many years she was not sure. She took the tonsure after her husband died, and at the time she told herself it was because she wanted to devote herself to the Buddha's path. But she knows now, looking back, that it was also because the world had become painful to her and she wanted to step to the side of it. And for years, her practice felt like that, a stepping aside. The Nenbutsu was a screen she stood behind, the way a noble woman stands behind a curtain, present but hidden. What changed, she says, and here her voice drops, becomes almost wondering, as though she is discovering the words as she speaks them, was that she began to watch. Not to pray more, not to study the sutras more carefully, but simply to watch. She watched the garden, her small herb garden, nothing grand. She watched the way Yoshikane tended the main garden. She watched Fujiko blend incense on winter evenings. She watched the plum tree open its blossoms in the cold, and slowly, so slowly she almost didn't notice, the watching and the praying became the same thing. The Nenbutsu stopped being words she said and became a way of being present. She began to say Amida's name the way Yoshikane places a stone, with her whole self, attending to what was before her, not reaching for something beyond. She does not know if this is what the monks would call correct practice. She suspects some of them would say she has it wrong. But it is what she has found, and it is true, and she offers it to Cyan not as instruction, but as something she has learned, the way one might offer a smooth stone found on a riverbank, saying, "Here, I found this. I thought it was beautiful." Cyan receives it. She does not yet understand it fully, but something in her loosens, some tightness she has been carrying since she arrived in this household, some anxious clutching at correctness, at getting things right. She looks out at the moon on the pond and thinks, perhaps it is not about getting things right. Perhaps it is about being fully in the room when the moon rises, and the thought settles over her like a robe, soft and warm. The autumn deepens. The maples turn. First the outermost leaves, gold and amber, then the deeper branches, crimson and vermilion, until the garden is a tapestry of color so rich it seems almost impossible, as though someone has taken every shade of warmth and woven them into a single burning fabric. Yoshikane moves through this splendor with a rake and a quiet eye, gathering the fallen leaves into soft mounds, clearing the paths, tending the moss that the falling leaves would otherwise smother. He does not hurry. The leaves will fall at their own pace, and he will tend them at his. The new section of the garden is nearly complete. He has rebuilt the retaining wall with stones from the riverbed, chosen for their color and texture, gray-blue stones veined with white, river-smoothed. He has planted a young maple and a cluster of low-growing ferns, and he has set 3 stones in a grouping that suggests, without imitating, the shape of a distant mountain range seen through mist. The stream now flows cleanly through this section, murmuring over a bed of pebbles he placed by hand. He is proud of this work, though pride is not quite the right word. He is satisfied that the garden feels right, that it has the quality his teacher used to describe as shizen, naturalness, the appearance of having always been this way, as though the gardener's hand had merely uncovered what was already there. It has taken him months, and the quiet process of it, choosing each stone, placing it, standing back, looking, sometimes removing it and starting again, has been, without his fully realizing it, a meditation. He has been thinking about what remains. His body is aging. His knees ache in the mornings. The work will eventually pass to someone else. And in the act of shaping this corner of the garden, he has been shaping something he can leave behind. Not a monument, not anything grand, but a place where water and stone and moss and light come together in a way that feels true. Takako visits the new section one afternoon and stands in it for a long time without speaking. She notices everything, the way the stones are grouped, the way the ferns catch the last of the afternoon sun, the sound the water makes as it passes over the pebble bed, different from the sound it makes in the deeper channel by the pond. She notices that one of the stones has a faint green vein running through it that catches the light, and that Yoshikane has placed it so that this vein faces the path, where someone walking by would see it. She tells him it is beautiful. He nods, and she can see that the word means something to him, that it reaches him in a place that is usually private. They stand in a moment of shared understanding, the young noblewoman and the aging garden keeper, that crosses the vast distance between their worlds and rests briefly in the simple fact that they both know beauty when they see it, and that this knowledge is its own kind of bond. It is during this same week that Naramichi suggests to Takako, through Fujiko, as propriety requires, that she might wish to visit the workshop of the papermaker Enshu. Naramichi has noticed, with the attentiveness of a man who makes his living by noticing, that Takako has a hunger for the origins of things. She wants to know not just the surface of beauty, but what lies beneath it, where it comes from, what hands shaped it. And so, with Fujiko's permission, and with Sei as a companion, Takako makes the journey out of the city to the small workshop by the cold stream. What she sees there changes her. She watches Enshu work. She watches the old man's swollen hands take up the bamboo screen and dip it into the milky water. She watches the rocking motion, the patient layering, the almost imperceptible adjustments of angle and speed that determine the quality of each sheet. She sees the stack of finished paper on its pressing board, each sheet separated by a thread. She sees the drying boards, smooth with years of use. She sees the raw materials, the stripped bark soaking in the cold stream, the pale fibers that look like nothing at all until the water and the skill and the patience of the maker transform them into something that will receive ink, carry words, hold the thoughts and feelings of people for years, perhaps centuries to come. And she understands for the first time that the paper she writes on every day, the paper she has been taught to select with such care for its color, its texture, its suitability for this or that kind of poem, is not simply a material, it is a gift. Someone's hands were in cold water so that her hands could hold a brush. Someone's body ached so that her thoughts could have a surface to rest on. She does not say this to Enshu. She is too moved and too uncertain of her own words to speak it. But Enshu sees something in her face, in the way she watches, in the quality of her attention, that tells him she understands. And for a man who has spent his life making a thing that is used up, written on, folded, sent away, eventually crumbled or burned, a thing whose purpose is to disappear beneath the words and images placed upon it, the knowledge that someone has seen his work, truly seen it, is a gift in return. When they leave, Heian walking slightly ahead on the narrow path, Takako pauses at the edge of the stream and looks back. Enshu has already returned to his work, his bent form visible through the open wall of the workshop, his hands moving in their ancient rhythm. The stream runs past him, cold and clear, carrying leaves downstream toward the city. And then the letter comes. It arrives on an afternoon of thin autumn sunlight, carried by a servant in the livery of a neighboring household. It is addressed to Takako. Attached to it is a small branch of maple, its leaves at the peak of their color, 3 leaves precisely chosen, one gold, one crimson, one still half green, representing the full range of the season's change. The paper is fine. Takako notices this immediately, and now, after her visit to Enshu's workshop, the noticing carries a different weight. It is heavy paper, cream-colored, lightly scented with a blend she does not recognize, something with sandalwood and a touch of something floral. The letter contains a poem written in a man's hand. The calligraphy is careful, well-formed, the work of someone who has practiced diligently, if not brilliantly. The poem compares the colors of the autumn maple to the colors of a feeling, something seen, something that stirred the heart, something the writer hopes might be received. It is a courtship poem. It is the beginning. Takako sits with the letter for a long time. She reads it several times, not for the meaning of the words, which is conventional enough, but for what lies behind them. She examines the handwriting the way her mother taught her, looking for the character of the writer in the pressure of the brush, the spacing of the lines, the confidence or hesitation in the curves. The hand is steady. It is pleasant. It does not excite her, but it does not displease her either. The branch of maple is well chosen, 3 leaves, 3 stages of the season, suggesting both attention and restraint. She thinks about the man. Masahira is his name, the son of a mid-ranking official, and she realizes that what she feels is not the flutter she expected, not the overwhelming emotion that the old tales describe. What she feels is something more like curiosity, mingled with a deep awareness of the strangeness of this moment, that her life, her future, might turn on a poem, that the words she writes back will be read as carefully as she is reading his, that in the space between his letter and her response, something is being decided, not just about him, but about her. She takes out paper. She reaches for her inkstone, grinds the ink slowly, watching the black liquid pool in the well of the stone, and then she sits, brush poised, and waits for her own words to come. They do not come from the poetry she has memorized. They do not come from the proper forms she has been taught. They come from the garden, from the image of light falling through maple leaves and landing on the surface of the pond, broken into pieces by the water's movement, scattered and shimmering and impossible to reassemble. It is an image she has seen 100 times, but today it means something new. It means, I am here, and I am looking, and what I see is my own. It means, this is my voice, not my mother's, not the voice of the old poems, but mine. She writes. When Fujiko, later that evening, asks gently about the letter, Takako shows her the poem she composed in reply, and Fujiko reads it and is quiet and then reads it again. There is something in her daughter's poem, an originality, a specificity of seeing, that surprises and moves her. It is not a perfect poem. It is something better. It is a true one. She looks at Takako and sees, for the first time, not her daughter, the child, but her daughter, the woman, someone with her own eyes, her own voice, her own way of being in the world. And the feeling this gives Fujiko is complex, pride and tenderness, and the faint ache of knowing that the person she has raised is becoming someone who no longer needs her in quite the same way. She folds the poem and returns it. She tells Takako it is a fine response, and in the way she says it, simply, without elaboration, Takako hears everything her mother means. Winter returns to Heian. It comes quietly, as it always does, a morning when the air has a different quality, a sharpness, a clarity, and the sky is the color of pale silk, and then, sometime in the late morning, the first flakes begin to fall. They fall slowly, almost reluctantly, as though they are not quite sure they want to land. The garden receives them in silence. The last of the maple leaves, brown and curled now, catch the snow on their surfaces and hold it for a moment before it melts. The stones in Yoshikane's new garden section are dusted with white, and the green of the moss beneath the snow glows with an almost unearthly vividness. Fujiko watches the snow from her window. She is wearing the winter layering called Yuki no Shita, beneath the snow, the same combination that Sei so carefully studied on her first days in the household, with its outer layers of white and its hidden warmth of plum blossom pink. She holds a cup of tea in both hands, and the warmth of it radiates through her palms, and the incense she blended for the winter season. The plum blossom blend she began all those months ago, now fully matured, its fragrance deeper and more complex than the day she made it, fills the room with a scent that is both an ending and a beginning. This has been a year of small changes. She would not call them dramatic. Nothing in the outer circumstances of her life has shifted. The household still stands, the estate still requires her management, the future still holds its uncertainties. But inside, something has opened. She has begun tentatively to share her writing, not the journal, that remains hers, but some of the poems. She showed one to Sei last week, a poem about the scent of incense on a winter evening, and Sei received it with such genuine feeling that Fujiko was startled by her own emotion. It had been so long since she had let anyone see her words. She had forgotten what it felt like to be read. Sei, for her part, has changed in ways she is only beginning to understand. She still cares about getting things right. She will always care about this. It is part of who she is. But the anxiety has softened. She arranges Fujiko's robes now with a confidence that comes not from having memorized the rules, but from having begun to feel the logic beneath them, the way the colors speak to each other, the way a slight adjustment can transform something correct into something alive. She thinks often of Renshi's words on the night of the moon viewing, and though she could not explain them to anyone else, she carries them like a private treasure, that being present is its own form of devotion, that sincerity matters more than perfection. Narimichi passes through the city one final time before winter closes the roads. He comes to the estate to deliver the last of the season's materials, a supply of aloes wood and clove to carry Fujiko through the cold months, and to say the quiet farewell that is not a farewell, because he will return in the spring as he always does. He is thinking more and more about what he will leave behind when he retires. He has been training a younger man in the trade, a nephew, patient and keen-nosed, and the process of teaching has made him realize how much of his knowledge lives in places he cannot easily point to. It is not in recipes or formulas. It is in the moment of smelling a raw material and knowing, without thinking, where it belongs. It is in the relationship between himself and the people he serves, the understanding that fragrance is not a luxury but a language, and that speaking it well requires a lifetime of listening. He sits on the veranda one last time, and Fujiko brings him tea herself. The same quiet gesture she has made for years, meaning the same thing it has always meant. They speak for a while about the coming winter, about the quality of the new aloes wood, about the nephew who will one day take his place. And then there is a pause, and in the pause, the snow falls between them, and the garden is still, and neither of them needs to say what the pause contains. It contains the knowledge that this warmth between two people who see each other clearly, is one of the most precious things either of them has known, and that it too, like all precious things, exists in time and will not last forever, and is beautiful precisely because of that. Narimichi bows, Fujiko inclines her head behind her screen, and he walks back through the gate, into the snow, the faint trail of sandalwood lingering behind him like a signature written in air. Yoshikane stands in the finished garden and watches the snow accumulate on the stones. Each stone wears its cap of white differently. Some hold the snow evenly like a smooth blanket. Others let it gather in their crevices, creating patterns of dark and light. The young maple he planted is bare now, its branches tracing delicate lines against the gray sky, and the ferns have curled into themselves for the winter, their green gone to brown. But the structure of the garden, the bones of it, the stones and the water and the careful shaping of earth, is revealed more clearly in winter than in any other season. When the leaves are gone and the flowers are gone and the moss is hidden beneath snow, what remains is the truth of the thing, the balance, the rightness, the feeling that everything is where it wants to be. He thinks about Takako's word, beautiful, and it warms him. He thinks about his teacher, long dead now, who taught him to listen to stones. He thinks about the fact that the garden will go on without him, that the maple will grow tall, that the stream will continue to murmur over the pebble bed he placed, that someone, someday, will stand where he is standing and feel what he feels, and will not know his name, and that this is all right. This is as it should be. In her small room, Renshi chants the morning Nenbutsu. The words are the same as they have always been, but she is not the same, and so the words are not the same. She says them slowly, each syllable given its full weight, her breath visible in the cold air of the room. Outside her window, the snow falls on her herb garden, covering the soil where the mugwort and the chamomile and the lavender will sleep through winter and rise again in spring. She does not know if Amida hears her. She does not know if the Western paradise is real in the way the snow is real, but she knows that she is here in this room, in this moment, saying these words with her whole self, and that the saying of them connects her to something, to the morning, to the falling snow, to the old woman she has become, to the young woman she was, to Heian who listened to her beneath the autumn moon, to the world that goes on being the world, beautiful and brief. Enshu in his workshop makes paper. The water is colder now than it has been all year, and his hands protest, and he works more slowly, but he works. Each sheet that comes off the screen is a small act of faith. Faith that someone will use it, write on it, send it to someone who will read it and be moved. He does not know that one of his sheets will carry Takako's poem to a young man she has not yet decided about. He does not know that another will receive the brushstrokes of Fujiko's private journal, the words she writes for no one but herself and the future. He does not know these things, and he does not need to know them. The paper does not need to know what it will hold. It needs only to be made, with care, with patience, with hands that have learned to listen to the water and the fiber and the light. And Takako. Takako sits at her writing desk on the morning of the first snow, looking out at the garden through her window. The garden is transformed. The stones, the water, the bare branches, the snow. It is the same garden she has looked at all her life, and it is entirely new. She thinks about the letter she sent and the reply she has received. Masahira's second poem, warmer than the first, more personal, with an image of snow on pine branches that is, she has to admit, quite good. She does not know yet what she feels. She knows that she is paying attention, that she is present in her own life in a way she has never been before, and that this paying attention is the beginning of everything. She picks up her brush. She begins to write. And so the year turns, as years do, in the old capital of peace. The snow continues to fall over Heian, softening the rooftops and the garden walls, muffling the sounds of the city, turning the world into something hushed and gentle and slow. In Fujiko's household, the evening lamps are lit early, and the incense burns its steady thread of warmth into the cold rooms, and the paper screens glow with the soft light of oil flames behind them, and the people inside go about the quiet rituals of winter, mending, reading, writing, sleeping, dreaming. These lives continue. They extend beyond the edges of our hearing, beyond the frame of this story, into the days and months and seasons that follow. Fujiko will go on blending incense and writing poems and managing her household with the same grace she has always shown. And one day, perhaps, she will gather her poems together and share them more widely, and they will be read and admired by people she has never met. Heian will grow into the role she was given and make it her own, and the friendship between her and Fujiko will deepen into something rare and lasting. Takako will continue her correspondence with Masahira, and whether it becomes a courtship or a friendship or simply a chapter that she looks back on with tenderness, she will carry with her the voice she found, her own voice, earned through attention and honesty and the willingness to look, truly look, at the world around her. Yoshikane will tend the garden through another year and another, and when his body can no longer do the work, the garden will remain, speaking quietly of his care. Narimichi will train his nephew, passing on what can be passed on, and will accept, with his usual gentle humor, that the rest, the part that lives in the senses, in the moment of recognition, in the space between one fragrance and the next, will have to be discovered anew, and Shu will make paper for as long as his hands allow, and each sheet will carry, invisibly, the imprint of his patience and his skill. And Renshi will chant her Nenbutsu in the mornings, in her small room, with the snow falling outside, and the words will mean what they have come to mean to her. Not a prayer for somewhere else, but a way of being fully here. These are ordinary lives. They are not recorded in the histories. No chronicle will note the day Fujiko perfected her winter blend, or the afternoon Takako stood in a papermaker's workshop and understood something about beauty and labor that she would carry for the rest of her life. No poem anthology will preserve the moment Renshi spoke to Sain beneath the autumn moon, or the morning Yoshikane placed a stone beside a stream and felt it settle. And yet these moments are real. They happened, or something very like them happened, 1,000 years ago, in a city of wooden houses and silk robes and paper screens, where people lived with an attention to beauty that has never quite been equaled, and where the awareness that beauty passes, that the cherry blossoms fall, that the incense disperses, that the moon moves on across the sky, was not a source of sorrow, but a reason to pay attention, to be present, to notice the quality of light through a rain-streaked screen, to listen to the stone, to say the prayer with your whole self, even if you are not sure anyone is listening. And now the snow falls, and the lamps burn low, and the city settles into its winter silence, and the people in the old house on the eastern side of the capital draw their quilted robes around their shoulders and close their eyes, and the world is quiet, and the world is kind,